Doing today, as you can see, my new desktop background is from the recent trailer of Star Wars Episode 9. Uh, at least part of it on this monitor anyway. You can see the wider picture on both my monitors, but I'm only showing one monitor in the stream. All right, well, thank you for joining me. We're going to get started here with some coding here in a little bit, but I do want to give a shout out a little bit to some of my new followers. I put out a call to action on Twitter. I was so close to 50 followers, which is what you need to start applying for Twitch affiliate status. And I definitely made that goal and then some. So I want to thank you all for following me. I don't know some of you, so I appreciate your follows. I'm going to go through the list here of people that have followed since the last live streaming episode, live coding episode. So C# Fritz, of course. I think he's already on there, but just another shout out for him. You can always check out his Twitch channel, C# Fritz, for Fritz and Friends. Lots of great stuff there. Big community. Some good stuff there. Robert Tables is a guy I kind of know through that channel just a little bit. I just met him. I really like his Twitch name, Robert Tables. It's sort of the ex-KCD joke. Really like that. The Michael Jolly. I tuned into his Twitch stream recently, and I got to see him do some coding and also play a little bit of guitar. So that was very nice. Definitely check him out. I'm Not Myself. I believe I'm Not Myself works for Auth0 as a developer advocate. And I was recently a speaker in the Nomad.js virtual meetup, which I think he helps to organize. I'm not 100% sure. I know like 2 or 3 Auth0 people. I tend to get them mixed up. So all these other followers, thank you very much for the follow. Dennis Rosa is a coworker of mine. Thank you for the follow, Dennis. Appreciate that. Hope to see some good things from you. Other follows, thank you very much. BL Bryant, I think this is my boss, who's following me, so thank you for that follow, Benjamin. Some more people, thank you for following me. Joe Lord, I think, is also with Auth0. I think that's, if I'm not getting these mixed up, another DA with Auth0 or something like that with Auth0. I'm not sure, but thank you for the follow, Joel. Not sure how you say this, Naunga, Naunga. I know this person from Twitter, so thank you very much for the follow. This one, I don't know who you are, Noodle Noggin OH, but I really love your name because I think it is a reference to Pinky and the Brain. So if that's the case, awesome. Some more people following me. Ancient Coder. I just kind of looked around for some live coders, and I think this was one that came up. Developers Garage. This is Ryan Overton. He calls his channel Developers Garage. He's doing some cool live coding stuff there. Rambling Geek. Thank you for following me. BT Burnett 3 is actually someone I know through the Couchbase community. He's not a Couchbase employee, but he uses Couchbase extensively at his employer. He's an architect. He's created several open source projects, like a link provider for Couchbase, which is very cool, and some other really good stuff for ASP.NET. Some of which we may get to at some point in the stream. I don't know if we'll need all those tools for what I'm doing for this tutorial, but they're very cool, so we might. Thank you for the follow. Dev Chatter, this is Brendonius's, hope I'm saying that right, live streaming channel. Definitely check that out. I think I actually auto-host this one and C# Fritz and some other channels, Developers Garage and whatnot. So you can always come back to my channel, see who I'm hosting if you're interested in that. Some other followers, thank you all very much. .NET Geek, thank you for the follow. Some more coders. There's Brendonius. He's the guy behind Dev Chatter. This might just be his gaming channel. I'm not really sure, but definitely check him out. Andrew Maxey stopped in last night. I think we used to work together for the same company. I'm not really sure. He used to live here in the Columbus area. He stopped in last night for some of the live soldering I was doing. So thank you for the follow, Andrew Maxey. Appreciate that. Roland Uno also stopped in to check out some soldering and was very helpful in the chat. So thank you for the follow, Roland. And everyone, thank you very much for the follow. So I'm in the process now of getting Twitch affiliate status. There's some paperwork and things you got to do. But thank you very much for all the follows. I appreciate them. And I think there's also some people who have started subscribing to me on YouTube. I appreciate that. So videos I make here on Twitch, I'll put them. I put them over on YouTube, and I also tend to make highlight clips. Since these streams are 2-ish hours long, I'll make little shorter highlight clips of interesting little fun tidbits, and all those things go on YouTube as well. So that's another reason I want to give you all a shout out, because if you're not following me when I'm live streaming, you don't get the little graphic get immortalized into a YouTube video. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you all for following me. I really very much appreciate it, and I'll let you know about the Twitch affiliate stuff. I've also added some things to the screen here over this way, down here. So a couple links, my Twitch link, of course, that bit.ly goes to YouTube. And there's a little widget I've added with Streamlabs that I think shows must be the viewer count right now. Down there, right here, this little number right here. So that's the current viewer count, I think, if it's working right. Okay, so that is what's going on. All right, so last stream, we got Kafka working and Kafka Connect to connect up data going into MySQL, and that goes through Kafka, and we got it going into Couchbase, and that was working great. And so I've done a few things. Let me just open up Visual Studio here. I've done a few things since then to follow up on that, and we're going to open up a recent one. So I'm calling this project the Customer 360 Simulator, and it's a simulator because in a true Customer 360 architecture, you would have dozen, perhaps, maybe more, maybe a few less systems, and they'd all have their own data sources and data exports and communications, things like that, but they'd all be full-featured systems. We talked about, if I can go back to this here, our example, our tutorial is going to be 3 systems: home delivery, loyalty program, and online store. I don't necessarily need or want to build out a whole home delivery system for this tutorial, right? I mean, the actual interface for the home delivery, it's really immaterial to the Customer 360 portion of the architecture. So instead of building out a whole system where I would simulate signing up and entering your address and placing orders and all those sorts of things, I'm just going to simulate data being put in this database, data being modified in this database. The rest of that piece, I don't really need that for the tutorial. And same thing down here for loyalty program. I don't need to build out a whole loyalty program and create loyalty cards and give those and things like that. I just need a database, put some data into the database, and then a nightly job to get data out of the database into a CSV file. And finally, with the online store, I don't need to build out an entire online store for this tutorial. I don't even really need a database for this, although I might end up using a database or simulating a database based on these other two. But all I really need is a REST API to make some calls to from the Customer 360 to say, hey, give me information about this user, give me information about their orders, things like that. So I'm going to wrap these all up, all these, what they would be real systems, into a simulator, because I'm really just interested in the ingestion part of the system. I have these data sources, I want to get them together into the Customer 360 platform. So that's why I'm calling it a simulator. Now, I think I did some of this work on the stream, and I have made some changes. So let me just show you. I changed the name of the controller. It was values controller. That was the default name when I do a file in Visual Studio. I changed it to Customer 360 controller. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yes, Customer 360 controller. And I had this create home delivery user endpoint, which I think I worked through last time. This will call, all it does is just a get HTTP method to call this repository method. And these methods I'm creating are just kind of for my own testing purposes right now. I don't even know if I'll end up using those. I probably will bring in something like Hangfire to run these in the background and run them on a regular basis, so I don't have to be manually clicking these buttons all the time to add more data and see that data flow through the system. And then also created another method to update an existing user. So this one's going to not create a new record, but it's going to pull out an existing record, make some changes to it, and save those changes, just to make sure that my system is accounting for not only new records, but also changes to existing records. And I think I also made some changes here to create new customers. So I think last time you saw this, it was only like first name, last name, and email. And based on the requirements, which I think I also have a picture of somewhere, and these aren't really hard and fast. I don't have a picture of it. The requirements aren't super important here, like what the shape of the data is, but I wanted to make it a little more fleshed out than just first name, last name, email. So I'm using Faker again, except for password here, to populate this data with just a bunch of real looking but ultimately fake data. So city, state, zip code, phone number, address line 1. Every once in a while, looks like a coin flip here. I'll put in address line 2, so like an apartment number, suite number, things like that. For password, the Faker library I'm using doesn't have a password faker, so I'm just using my favorite random string generator, which is path.getRandomFileName. And this is designed for you to create temporary files on a Windows file system or whatever file system. But this method, getRandomFileName, all it does is just return a pretty much randomly generated file name, which would be a pretty strong password, a pretty realistic looking password. So I'm going to use that to generate my fake password data. Now, for this initial Customer 360 run, I'm not even sure why we're bringing in password data. There are, however, after this ingestion tutorial is done, there are plans for further expansion of Customer 360. So we may want to migrate from the MySQL or the Postgres database into just using Couchbase at some point. So we may want to pass that password information along. My concern here is when you're moving passwords around, this can be tricky. That's definitely a piece of sensitive information. So, be extra careful and make sure you know what you're doing when you're moving passwords around. For my tutorial, I'm just treating it as any other piece of data. All right, and then down here I'm still using Adapter, although I changed it up. I think I was too verbose last time. I created a whole anonymous object. I can just pass in regular objects here, and Dapper will figure it out that, hey, yeah, name needs to go to name, email needs to go to email, etc. For update existing, what I did was I'm connecting to the MySQL database, and okay, it looks like, just glancing over here, this viewers widget down here is working now, because there's one viewer, and I think I see one viewer on my own dashboard. So anyway, this is a query that's going to select a single random record from this customer's table, because I want to just pick one of those existing customers and update it. So I'll just pick one at random, order it. What I'm doing here is I'm selecting all the records, and selecting all the fields from all the records, ordering them by some random number, and then just taking the top one. This may not be the most efficient way to pull a random record, but this is just meant to be a simulator. Not a big deal. It'll be fine. If you have a better suggestion for pulling a random record out of MySQL, please let me know. And then what I'm doing is, and this is actually, I don't know if this may not be the best approach, but I'm doing a coin flip. If heads, basically, then I will update the phone number. And I'm doing like a 3-sided die roll here. And basically, think of it as if one of the particular sides comes up, let's say a 1 or a 3 or whatever, then I will update the city. So I'm updating either the phone number or the city, although it is possible, conceivably, that I could make it through these if gates without updating any data. So I don't think that's a problem. I don't think it's a big problem at all. And then this update statement will update the phone number and city based on, again, the ID here, which I got from this query. So really all I need, I don't need a select star. All I need is really is ID, phone number, and city. But I'm going to leave it select star for now, because again, this is a simulator. This is not meant to be production code. And for here, for Dapper, I do need to create an anonymous object to pass those 3 things in. Although, again, I probably could just pass in customer. Let me think about it. Because I am updating the customer object directly. Anyway, that's fine. So both these things work. And here's the entity, by the way, home delivery customer. And the other thing I added to this, because last time I was streaming, I think I was using Fiddler, or I was maybe even using Chrome to hit these endpoints. So another thing I added is I added a swashbuckle. You can see here my dependencies, NuGet. Oh no, it's down here. Dependencies, NuGet. I've added swashbuckle, which is an implementation of, I guess, Swagger, which is itself an implementation of OpenAPI. But anyway, you can see going in here, I've added Swagger. I've added, decided to use Swagger, and then I'm going to use the Swagger UI. And Swagger's, I'm not going to go into it too much. I actually wrote a blog post about this some time ago. But it basically is a way to automatically generate an API based on, well, Swashbuckle is anyway, based on the my controllers. So I've said this is a GET, and here's the URL. So, and then it can also examine what's being returned and what is being passed in, and it can generate. Oh, that's the wrong one. It can generate a API documentation based on that. So what I end up with, and then I can add a UI here with the Swagger UI. What I end up with is kind of an interactive documentation of my endpoints. So here's that create endpoint. These are pretty boring because there's no parameters being passed in, right? No parameters. And it can really only return just that string of success, or it would throw an exception, right? So I can actually try this out. So I tried this out already, so I know this works. But I'll connect to my MySQL database, which is still running in Docker, by the way. And here's my customers table. One thing I didn't point out was that I actually changed the customers table. So I'm jumping all over the place here. I'm sorry about that. But if you look here at this scripts file, what I did was I altered, the Debezium, this MySQL database comes with a customers table already prepared. And what I did was I just altered that table to add some more fields, change the constraints, things like that. Anyway, so back here, this is the actual table containing the data. You can see I've already put some fake data in here. But I will go ahead and back to here and hit the execute. So that just hit the endpoint. And so what I should expect is I had 1001 through 1019. If I refresh this table, I should have 1019. And there we go. Mrs. Lacey Herzog. And she lives in Arizona. So there we go. Got her information. Now the next thing I want to do is try out the other endpoint. So I'll minimize that. This is the update one. This is going to pull a record at random. And so I'm going to click this a few times just to make sure it's obvious when we refresh this table that all those changes made place. So this is not going to add new records. It's going to update existing records. Do a refresh here, and you can see, I don't know if you can see that little jump, but some values in the city column changed. All right, so there we go. We've got those two endpoints working. Now, it really is, again, just for me to kind of test them. Ultimately, I'm going to be calling probably these repository methods via some sort of background job or some sort of process like that. All right. So let's go. So the MySQL part of this is basically, we're all set to go. Bring up this diagram again. So what I've got is I've got a MySQL database. I've got connected via Kafka to Couchbase. Actually, that part is shut down right now, so we're just working on MySQL. And I've got a way to simulate customers being added or updated in the home delivery database. So the next thing I want to work on is the loyalty program. So for this one, I'm going to use a different database. And if you may have saw this window I brought up earlier, I'm going to use Postgres for this. It's not super important, except that I want it to be a different database than MySQL. If these were all MySQL, I wouldn't be really covering much new ground for each of these parts. Additionally, I could also use a Kafka stream to connect Postgres to Couchbase. But again, what's the point of just doing the same thing again? For a tutorial, I want to do a different approach. So we're assuming in this case that there's some, possibly Postgres or whatever database out there. And the only way we can get access to that data for whatever reason, either technical or political or security reason, or maybe it's just sort of a makeshift thing. Right now, we just have a nightly CSV export. So I need to do something similar what I did with MySQL. I need to spin up a Postgres database in Docker with some loyalty data already in it. And then I need to modify my simulation program to, again, put data in that database, update existing data, the typical changes you'd see from a loyalty program. And then I also need, in my simulator program, I'm going to just do it in there while I'm at it, is it's going to actually then schedule a job to pull data out of that table. In our case, we're going to export the entire table of user data. That's one of the requirements for this tutorial. The entire table is going to be exported. So we don't have the ability to do like a diff or these are the records that have changed since whatever. We're just going to export the whole thing. Either way, it should work, but we're going to just export the entire table into a CSV file every night, which will then be picked up by some process, which in my case just happens to be the simulator program, and put that data into Couchbase. So we're going to be moving data from Postgres to Couchbase using C#, and we're going to be putting data into Postgres using C# in ASP.NET. Okay, so let's start with just spinning up Postgres. So Postgres has an official Docker image. Let's refresh it here just to make sure we're on the latest. And it looks like we've got version 11 is the latest version of Postgres. Postgres is a relational database. It does have some very cool JSON features, but it is ultimately a relational database. Very, very popular database, open source. I have not used it very much in my career. I've used MySQL, I've used SQL Server, I've used a little Oracle. I've not used much Postgres in my career, so this is going to be relatively new for me as well. So we can start a new Postgres instance by just using this Docker command. So that's going to create a Postgres image, run it, and this is the password it's going to use. I guess I'm not sure what -d is. -d. Oh, that's going to run in the background. Hey, that's fine. I'll probably change this to a --rm. So default Postgres user is created and database is created in the entry point with a initdb. All right, interesting. I could also use pSQL to do it. So I'm not sure what pSQL is. I guess that's the command line Postgres SQL tool. Docker run pSQL some Postgres. Okay. I could also use Docker Compose. I'm probably not going to do that. Try in pwd. Play with Docker. That's interesting. Let's try this out. A simple, interactive, and fun playground to learn Docker. Huh. This is going, yeah, so I have to do a whole thing. So, I don't know. Something to check out later. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so how to extend this image. So I'm kind of interested in this because I could do the same thing where basically I create a DDL file and just add my own tables, alter my own tables, things like that. I could do that. So maybe I'll start with that. So let's go ahead and run this Docker image. It's just based on what this says here. And this is, I've got an image here. This is how the CSV export is designed to look. So this is at least the information we want to store in the system. And now if you notice, there's an email column here. This one has first name and last name split up, unlike the other MySQL example. This one also has passwords, so potentially a different password because it's a different login for the loyalty system than it is for the home delivery system. And there's some points. So we're keeping track of loyalty points through this column here. There may be other data in this loyalty system. Doesn't really matter. Then the way we're going to match them up, this is actually, again, a requirement of the system. We're going to match them up by email address. So if Perry at Gmail is in the home delivery system, we're going to assume that this is the same Perry in this loyalty system and match them up in our Customer 360. Now, email might be a good place to start. It doesn't change that often, but it does change. People do change email addresses or want to use a different email address. So ultimately, how you match these up in your Customer 360 system is a pretty complex question. If you have some sort of unique identification number, you can use that. You could try to match it up by first name and last name, email address, phone number, or a combination of those things. And there's actually a whole area of study devoted to this kind of thing, this kind of operation. And it's not just for Customer 360, but it's for other interesting things that marketing might use to say, well, these people all belong to the same household, for instance. So that's one of the terms for that is householding. We can interact, people in a house. So I have accounts, and my wife has accounts, and my kids have accounts. And for instance, with Cincinnati Reds, we all have different accounts with Cincinnati Reds or with stuff affiliated with the Cincinnati Reds. And it's useful for the Reds to know that, hey, Matt Groves and Allie Groves, they're in the same household. So we want to combine them into a system in some way. And we match them up with the different combinations of things. So street address might be one, phone number might be one. But Allie might enter a slightly different spelling of the street address, right? I live on White Road, so I might put in White RD. She might put in White RD period, things like that. So it's a complicated subject, and there's nothing we can do in this tutorial to completely tackle that. So we're going to simplify it and say we're going to match these people based on email address. Okay, so let's get Postgres. Let's try to get started here. So I'm going to call this LoyaltyDB. All right, and so I'm not going to use -d. I'm going to do like I did with the other ones. We'll say IT and RM. So this means it's going to run in interactive mode, which means it's going to basically take control of this PowerShell window. RM means when this image is shut down, it's going to be removed. We're going to name it LoyaltyDB, and this is the stuff from I'm just going to call it password. This is stuff from the Docker Quick Start here, and Postgres is actually the name of the image. So why don't we just go ahead and copy this in case it works. I will just make a note of it. Let me actually bring up my scratch pad here. This is going to be modules, Customer 360. That's my ringtone. Assets, notes, yep. So I'll bring up my scratch pad here in Visual Studio Code, which is my go-to text editor. Okay, so I had some notes here about I was installing it with Chocolatey earlier, but I want to try to stick to the Docker thing here. But I'm also going to just make a note or use Chocolatey. So let's give that a try and see if that works. I feel like I should be exposing a port. What is the default port for Postgres? Because I want to be able to access it outside of the Docker host. 5432. So I probably also need to map the ports. My phone's going crazy over here. All right, so I'm trying to remember the syntax for port, just -p, okay. So over here, I'm going to say, right here, I think, -p 5432. Okay, let's go with that. Don't need that window open anymore. Back over here. All right, so I'm exposing 5432. I'm naming it LoyaltyDB, giving it a password of password. I'm not sure what the username is. Maybe root or something. I don't know. We'll find out. I'm using the Postgres image. Okay, so now it's got to hit Docker Hub because I've not done this before. So I'm downloading the image from Docker Hub. Just checking over here on Slack, getting a little distracted by Slack and Twitter while we wait for this Docker Hub download to happen. Let's see. Oh, not much happening. Oh, it looks like Calvin is checked in some stuff on his Twitter raffle winner chooser. So that's for our .NET Bytes podcast. He's working on that. I haven't watched any of his streams, and I really need to get in on that action. See what he's doing with that. Probably something really cool. That's Calvin A. Allen. All right, so looks like we're started here. We've started a server, so I guess let's try to connect to it. So I'm going to name this one, we're going to call this Postgres Loyalty. Localhost 5432. So I'm assuming the user is Postgres, and I'm using password as password. Okay, I've got this database in here. Okay, so that's working. So I'm in the default database. I think, so Postgres works a little differently.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Hey, got a follower. Thank you. Shoutouts. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Hope you're having a good day. We're doing some database stuff here. That voice you just heard, that sound effect, was Calvin Allen. Speaking of Calvin Allen, he used to say bada bing, bada boom a lot when we were pair programming, and we got something to work. He would just be like, bada bing, bada boom, it works. So there's no tables in here. We could create tables. And so back to, this is what we expect the CSV to look like. So we need to think of a good table name for people, for users who are loyal customers. I mean, we could just call it customers, I guess. But I kind of want to differentiate it from MySQL a little bit. So we could just call it members, loyalty members. All right. And we'll have an ID column. This will be an integer, and it will be a auto increment. And we'll make this one a primary key. Okay. What else we got? We've got a password, and varchar 50 is probably fine for password. Fname and lname. 50 is fine. Fname, lname, that's fine. Points. And in a loyalty system, this would probably be a table of activities, and each activity would be worth a certain number of points, things like that. And it wouldn't be stored in a single table with a points value. I would hope not. However, again, for our example, we're just really simplifying the system. And we don't need to go into, we're not creating a whole loyalty system. So I'm just going to leave it a points field in the table. That's all we really need. We may add some stuff later. One thing cool about this tool I'm using, which is called HeidiSQL, by the way. HeidiSQL, which is a Windows tool to connect and interact with MySQL, PostgreSQL, and even SQL Server databases, is that it will show you, as we go through the UI here, the SQL that's being generated to create this table. So I'll go ahead and save that. I've got some error message. What Why is that? Interesting. So auto increment. So I don't know. It may be thinking this is MySQL syntax. I don't know. Let's take off the auto increment for now. See if that works. Okay, it doesn't like the auto increment. So I guess I would need to know how to do auto increment in PostgreSQL. Interesting. So Postgres has data types. Let's put this over here on the screen. PostgreSQL has data types: small serial, serial, and big serial. These are not true types, but notational convenience for creating unique identifier columns. These are similar to auto increment in some other databases. So I think specifically they're calling out MySQL here because that's called identity in SQL Server, I believe. So if you wish a serial column to have a unique constraint or be primary key, it must now be specified, just like any other data type. The type named serial creates an integer columns. The type named big serial creates a big int columns. 2 to 31. Fine. Okay, so I want it to be serial, I think. ID serial primary key. That's not really a drop-down option. Yes, it is. It is a drop-down option. Okay. Very interesting. So that's going to be the alter statement to make that happen, but doesn't really like that either. Is that going to be? No, it doesn't like the auto increment. Okay, well, interesting. ID serial not null. Where was that? So it's ID serial primary key. So I think, all right, let's just go back to raw query. I want to drop table. I want to start over here. Drop table members. This is me not knowing enough about Postgres. Calvin Allen, I didn't see any tweet about this. Yeah, I did tweet it maybe an hour or so ago. Thanks for joining, though, Calvin. If you're a follower, you should get an email. That's, generally speaking, how I look for people who are broadcasting is I just get notified by either the Twitch app or an email or something like that. If I should tweet more often, I guess maybe that's your feedback there. I appreciate that, Calvin. Calvin says I turn that stuff off. Too many emails. LOL. You're probably right. At some point, I keep increasing my Twitch follower counts. It's probably going to be too much. Right now, though, I'm only following like live coders and stuff, so it's not as bad as people who are live streaming games all the time. So if you're following some of those people, I could see why you might want to turn that off. Okay, so sorry about that, Calvin. Next time I will tweet a little closer to when I go live. I noticed, by the way, I commented on this earlier. I saw that you've made some commits to your Twitter sweepstakes picker project. So I have not seen any of your streams about that. I really need to check that out. All right. Anyway, back to Postgres. Is this going to work? So it's still not happy. Oh, this primary key down here. So this seems like kind of a Heidi SQL bug to me. It's generating this SQL as if it was MySQL. Okay, that seems to work. Save modified table members. Yeah. Oh, that's very strange. Only one stream so far, nothing major. I added some issues this morning that I'm going to try and work. Oh, so there were issues that you added. All right, that's cool. So I want to just make a little file over here. I'm going to add a new item. In Visual Studio, you can search what kind of item you want. I'm just going to do a basic text file. This is going to be loyalty DDL dot DDL. So one thing I noticed yesterday is when I called it a .sql file, I got errors from Visual Studio at some point that it was not valid SQL. So I think it's trying to see if it's valid T-SQL or something. I don't know. So that's why I'm calling it a DDL file. So it's not, my Visual Studio is not going to try to validate this SQL here. So I think that works. I want to go ahead and select here. Select star from members. Should be an empty table. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Probably that SSDT extension they ship. That makes sense. Okay, so that was easy enough to install Postgres, and then I just sort of manually ran a script to create that table. Again, if I wanted to make this more automated, I'd probably make a custom, back over here, a custom, where is it? Yeah, right here. Some sort of custom Docker file of my own that would add the, where is it, a init? Yeah, initdb is sort of a folder that scripts that are run, scripts that are run when I first start this container, and I would put my create in there, but no reason to do that. SQL Server Data Tools. Yes, that's what SSDT is. Thank you, Calvin. All right, so I think we're good shape. One note I do want to say, I created a database. So with Postgres, I'm connected to, I guess, the default database. I don't know, but I'm putting a table in public here. So if this is confusing for anyone, I'll come back at some point. But right now, I think I'm pretty happy with that. So we got that running. Next thing I need to do is, here my Customer 360 controller. I'm going to do something similar here. So what I did with MySQL is I'm going to create a endpoint to create users inside that loyalty table. So we'll create loyalty, and I call it member. And I'm going to need a repository for that. So this will be loyalty repository. Haven't actually created this stuff yet, but I'm going to need it. So that's why it's all in red. So don't panic. Get to that in a second. And all this is going to do is just say create new member. Just like it's doing up there. Return OK, success. This is just for my testing purposes. I'm not going, I'm going to add these to like a background job, that sort of thing. And I'm going to do another endpoint. Loyalty, and this is going to be an update. And we will update loyalty member using that same repository, update loyalty member, return OK. So as you can tell, these endpoints are just basically pass-throughs. They don't do much on their own. Normally, you'd pass in some parameters. There'd be some validation, maybe some business logic, authorization, authentication, stuff like that. But I want to emphasize, again, this is just a simulator program. This is not meant to be an actual system. The actual parts of it, I will definitely make note of those. The Kafka system, that's an actual part of the system. That's what makes the ingestion work. This part is just so that we have some data to actually ingest. We're going to simulate that part of it. Okay, so back over here to, I don't have a loyalty repository method. So we'll go into core, our core project, and I'll create a class using ReSharper here called loyalty repository. And once again, this is not really a true repository pattern here. It's just a handy little helper class. We're going to put some methods there. Again, I'm using ReSharper, Alt-Enter, my favorite key combination. So I'll slow down here to kind of show what's going on. Since that method doesn't exist, Visual Studio is telling me it's in red, it doesn't exist. ReSharper can say, okay, I'll go ahead and create a shell of that method for you. Karnak. Oh, you know, I forgot about Karnak. I meant to try that out. Karnak is a tool that will show the keys that I'm pressing on the screen, like all the different keyboard shortcuts, Alt and Control and stuff like that. I'll try that next time if I remember, Calvin. Thanks for that reminder. Okay. This also needs a database connection in here. Now, I'm running into a bit of a problem because what I'm using here is an interface IDB connection. And if I go back to, that's going to be injected. If I go back to startup, what that's injecting is this MySQL connection. And I want to connect to a different database, but that is probably also going to be using this same interface. So at this point, there's really a couple options. I could use what's called named instances so that I know which one I'm using at the repository level to say, I want the MySQL implementation of this interface, or I want the Postgres implementation of this interface. Now, one unfortunate thing about that is that the built-in .NET dependency injection does not support named instances. So there's some hacks you can do to work around that, and there's also some other dependency injection containers like Lamar, for instance, that do support that. So I could bring in Lamar. But I think what I'm going to do, just again, I want to emphasize this is a simulation program. I probably wouldn't do this in reality. In fact, they'd probably be two separate systems, so I wouldn't have to worry about this problem. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of abstracting this, I'm going to just say we're only looking for MySQL connection. So we go back here, and I'm going to change this from the IDB connection to MySQL connection. Now, fortunately for us, Dapper doesn't care. As long as this implements that, Dapper will still work. But what I've done now is, and this isn't a big deal, but I've tightly coupled this repository to MySQL, which is fine. I'm not going to switch this to another database for my tutorial purposes. And so then what I need to do is I need to add another singleton here to Postgres connection. So I'm assuming that I will need another package. So I'll go into NuGet here and we'll just do a search for Postgres. And there'll probably be a Postgres connector of some sort. NPG SQL is the open source .NET data provider for Postgres. 9.6 million downloads. Hard to argue that it is the data provider for Postgres. So let's go check this out, this website, and just make sure. .NET access to Postgres. It's an open source ADO.NET provider, so that sounds good. We're going to get an IDB connection with that. It looks like there's some Entity Framework stuff there as well. Kind of hoping to see NPG like quick start sort of thing. I'm not seeing that. Oh wait, there's a getting help. Yeah, Stack Overflow. Fine. NPG SQL quick start. It's in some sort of unreadable symbols. Let's try this one. Yep, that's all fine. Database, blah, blah, blah. Interested in is the NPG SQL part. I'm not seeing that here. Huh. Okay. I need to put in .NET in there. Basic usage. Okay. So I'm seeing NPG SQL command. This is a familiar ADO.NET pattern that I'm seeing here with execute reader and creating commands and whatnot. So looks like that's what's going to work. Okay, so we'll install that one. We'll install it in the core in the web project. I'll also need it, I think, in the core project. So I probably should have gone about this a different way. Because I'm setting the dependency in the web project, but I'm actually going to use it in the core project. Let's do Postgres. Install there. Okay. Yep, that's fine. Okay. I got an update. What's up? What's updated? Okay, some sort of Azure thing, which I'm not using. Probably just came with the template. All right, so services, add singleton. So it's generally, when I'm adding a database connection, it's going to be a singleton because it's something that I want to connect to. It's a relatively expensive operation, so I want to connect. I want to do a one-time for the whole application, add a singleton. It isn't necessarily something you always have to do, but that's just kind of a good place to start. Okay, and I don't know, what is npg SQL dot npg SQL connection? Probably is the class we're going to use there. Okay, and just like up above, we're going to return new npg SQL connection. That's going to take a Postgres connection string. So we're going to create a Postgres connection string. And I just need to figure out what that is. So there, I think last time it was Calvin or somebody actually gave me there's like a connection string website, connection string reference website or something, connectionstrings.com. So we'll just look for Postgres, and this is kind of how it's supposed to look. So I'll just paste that in here. Now, some of this stuff I don't think I'm going to need. Like, I'm not going to mess around with any of these pooling settings, connection lifetime, stuff like that. Just go with defaults. That's going to be fine. Connectionstrings.com. Yes, there it is, Calvin. Thank you. When I connected via root was the user and password was the password. So that's fine. Host is localhost. That's fine. I use the default port. Database equals my database. So I didn't specify a name. I'm wondering if it's just going to know the default database and connect to it. Okay. And so we've got this. So we'll create a new, we'll actually go in here. This is going to be npg SQL connection. Let's call it DB connection. And read-only field. Create a new member. So we're just going to, I'm just going to hard code this for now, just to make sure the connection is actually working. But it is, it's called members. Turn into members. These are going to be the column names. These will be the column values. And so we've got password, fname, lname, points. Password, fname, lname, points. And again, it's hard coding it. So my password, super secret password, Matt Groves, and I have 1,000,000 points. Well, let's not get too crazy with the points. Okay, compile. Yep, it is working. So I'll run the website, and once again, we'll go to Swagger, and you can see those 2 points that I created. Swagger automatically picked those up. It's very cool. Well, I keep saying Swagger. What I mean is swashbuckle / Swagger / OpenAPI. They're all working together. So when I say Swagger, that's what I mean. Swashbuckle, Swagger, and OpenAPI. Okay, so we'll create a loyalty user. And this is going to hard code create one for Matt Groves, if it works. And got an error. You can tell because it's all HTML here. So this is, again, just a really poor job on my part to handle errors. But let's just open this up. See the white screen of death here. Unable to resolve service type for loyalty repository. Jeez, seems like I make this mistake every darn time. I need to say I need to add the loyalty repository to the container every time. Okay, try it out and execute it. We still might get an error message. In fact, we do. So let's take this URL and just bring up the white screen of death. Password authentication failed for user root. Okay, I'm remembering back now, and it is not root, it is Postgres is the name of the default user. So let's go back to startup. And it's not root, it's Postgres. Root is the default root user for MySQL. Postgres, I guess, is the default, I don't know if they call it root or admin user or whatever for Postgres. All right, we'll try it again in Swagger, optimistically. And nope, still erroring. Oh. Syntax error at or near value. Did I enter my SQL wrong? Yeah, this should be values. Values. Oh boy. This is programming for you. One more time. Success. Da 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 da. All right, and then it's there in the table. Terrific. Okay. Great. Now let's make it a little more generic. What are we doing on time, by the way? 11 o'clock. So I've got to stop at just before noon. I've got a meeting. I think I have a meeting. Hasn't been canceled yet. I gotta stop there. So I got about an hour left. So we can get some work done here. All right, we're going to do a similar thing that I did last time. Member equals new loyalty member. That's a class I haven't created yet. And this is going to be like this, just to make this a little more readable. We can just put them in here. Password, first name, last name, and points. And those are going to be member. Yeah, okay, we're good there. So I'll create a new class here. It probably should be, not at this point, I don't know if this is necessary. It might be a little overkill, but at least to pull out this home delivery customer to its own file. And while I'm at it, I'll create a class for loyalty member. Loyalty member, okay. And back over, let me close some of this stuff up here. Say member.password, and I'll use my trick again with path to get random file name. Member.firstName. This is going to be faker again. Name.first. Last name. Name.last. And member.points. So I'm going to start with a random number between, I don't know, 1 point and 100 points. So they'll start out with some value between 1 and 100. Okay. Now again, these are red, because they don't actually exist yet. If you look at my loyalty member, there's nothing in it. So again, with ReSharper, I can just go through this and create property, and it's going to divine that it's a string there, and figure that out for me. Just Alt Enter and then Enter, and it'll create all of these. And this one, it figures out that it's an int. There might be I wonder if there's a trick. Since I have all those that were in the red, and I want to create all of them, if I could like highlight them and hit Alt Enter or something. I don't know. Any ReSharper experts out there? Let me know. I think you can do something similar with just plain Visual Studio. I'm not 100% sure. Shortcuts for it. And of course, I could just always enter these manually as well. That's another thing I could do, just type them in, totally fine. Just I've sort of become used to and dependent on ReSharper over the years. So that should create a randomish looking member. So then if I go back to my Swagger UI, Calvin says that would be nice. Yeah, it probably is possible. There's got to be something like that. So we're going to execute this, just keep on clicking it a few times here. And that should add a bunch of data in here. A bunch of, oh, go in here, refresh. Yeah, a bunch of randomishly generated but reasonably realistic information. Password, first name, last name, and points. Great. And the next thing we want to do is we're going to update. So just like I did with MySQL, I'm going to get a random member. And in this case, I'm just going to update their points, because that's sort of what the loyalty system is for, right? Is you keep adding points. You're adding your Sky Miles or your whatever points. All right. So I'm going to. Yeah, there's probably a way I could do this with one SQL statement, but let's just keep it simple here. We'll say member equals, and let's just try this query first. We're going to select star from members. We only want one of them. Does limit work in Postgres? It does. Okay. What about order by rand? Does that work in Postgres? It does not. Okay. So I'm sure there's a way to get a random number in Postgres. Let's just find what that is. Generate series. There's also this random, so maybe it's just random? Okay, yep, it's random, so that works. So we're going to select one member using this select query here. And we're going to use, again, Dapper to get this. Query of type loyalty member. Oh, why am I using this? It should be like this. SQL. Okay. So one other thing we need to do then is, I didn't add here, is we need to put in an ID. Okay, so that will get a member back out. And then I need to, oh, null sprite says random. Thank you, null sprite. Thank you for that. I didn't see your comment before I started Googling, but thank you. I juggle all these different SQL syntaxes in my mind. All right, so we have a random member. We have one single member. I'm doing a select star. Again, probably don't want to do select star in practice. You want to be as you want to select just the fields that you want, but I don't really. Again, this is totally simulator tutorial code. This is not even the code that is part of the tutorial. This is just setup code. Okay, so we have the member. I want to increase that member's points. Member, oh, this needs to be first, because that's a collection. So member.points plus equals, and we're going to do a faker random number, and again, next, we're going to add some point between 1 and 100 to that member. And then all we need to do is dbconnection.execute. We're going to update members, set points equal to points, where, is it ID? Yes, ID, where ID equals ID. And I'm not sure if I need to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Anonymous object, where I have member.points and member.id. So Dapper is doing the mapping to say this point, whatever the value of this is, because it's named points, should go into here. And whatever the value of this is, should go into here. All right. Let's see if it works. Okay. So let's bring up my screen here. So I've got 7 members in there, and these are the point values you can see. And I'm going to do a bunch of clicking, and these numbers are going to change. So that changed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So a lot of these should change. We've refreshed them. The point values have all gone up. So there we go. We're simulating our loyalty system. Our users are doing, our members are doing something, making purchases or whatever, to get points. Now, I'm not going to create that system where they have to sign in and book a flight or a hotel or purchase something to get points. I'm just doing the very basic minimum here to make these points values go up. So there we have it. Now, at this point, probably it would be a good idea for me to do a little bit of committing. So this is all this tutorial code is on GitHub, and it's available for anyone to want to check it out and use it. It's a little messy right now, and it's also it's not in the master branch. It's actually in a Customer 360 ingestion branch here. But we added, so we can just do a quick little diff here. My tool of choice for working with Git is Tortoise Git. I know that not everyone, I think I covered this before, some people like the command line for Git. I like this UI. Place I used to work, last place I used to work for source control, we use Subversion. Calvin's giving me some sort of monkey face here. We used Subversion, and so I used Tortoise SVN for that, and I just got used to using Tortoise SVN. Calvin says I should use Git Kraken. I tried Git Kraken for like a month or so, and I don't know. I wasn't really feeling it. It was it had some interesting things, but I came back to Tortoise Git in the end. So anyway, and I'll use the Git command line every now and then. So you can see our csproj file. All I did was add this npg SQL home delivery repository. I just changed it from interface to MySQL there, and I moved this file out. Calvin says, I also like source tree. I don't think I've ever used source tree, although it kind of sounds familiar. For my controller, all I did was add 2 new methods and 1 new repository being injected. Now, at this point, if this was a real application, I would be looking at this and starting to get a little nervous because I've got 2 repositories and I've got 4 methods, which 4 methods is fine, but these 2 seem to be related to home delivery. These 2 seem to be related for loyalty, so this should probably be broken up into 2 different controllers in reality. But again, it's not going to get much crazier than that. Calvin says, I'm Git Kraken and PoshGit. Never tried PoshGit. Are you guys still using Subversion? It's okay. There's no reason to be ashamed if you are. Subversion is a perfectly cromulent source control tool. But I use it there for 2-3 years, and I was wondering if you guys are still using it or if you'd switched over to Git yet. NPG SQL being added there. For startup, all I did was again made this more specific and added one for Postgres. That looks good. And these are all brand new files. So we added customer loyalty data creation with Postgres. Calvin says, moving to Git at the end of our current release. So here's Tortoise pushing those changes in our repository. And I will go ahead and do a push. So put these out there on GitHub. And while I'm at it, I may as well just I'm gonna start off screen because I'm logged in. Well, I'll do a incognito here. I'll show you where this actually is. If you go to GitHub and Couchbase Labs, can see tutorials contrib. It's right there. This is a public repository. It's a little bit special because these tutorials actually get contributed into the official Couchbase document website. And so you can see this is the master branch right now. But if you go over to the branches here, I've got this Customer 360 ingestion. That's the branch I'm working in right now. I don't want this actually to get pushed out to Couchbase documentation, either staging or production. So I'm keeping it in its own separate branch for now. But you're welcome to check out the code there. You can you can go to, it's in modules, Customer 360, and I think examples is where I'm working. You're welcome to go in there and mess around with the code. Submit a pull request if you want to. I'd be willing to take it, but no, I have no expectation of you actually contributing to it. If you want to try it out, you have questions, you can play with it. Please feel free. It's yours to do with as you please. All right. So I'm now creating members. The next thing I want this repository to do is, let me think about this a little bit, is I want to get all of them. Get all members. And this is going to be for export. May as well just call it that. And so this is going to be very similar to up here, this part actually. I want to select all members, and I'm not going to limit them or order them in any way. I'm just going to select all of them. I'm not going to select first either. I'm just going to select all of the members, and that's going to return enumerable. So return members. I think I need to say members.toList. So once, what's the problem here? Cannot change expression in the loyalty repository. Moving to a list of repos, he says. Oh, yeah, sorry. Not repository, member. Should be members. That's right. Thank you, Calvin. Yeah, so the idea here is that I'm going to use this method to create that nightly CSV export. Now, what I don't know for sure is this the best way to get like a big batch of data out of the database into a CSV? I'm guessing Postgres probably has a tool for that, command line tool. And barring that, there's probably some sort of bulk operation. I don't know if NPG SQL supports that. I don't know. So I'm just going to make a note. There might be a better way to export data from Postgres. There probably is. Ultimately into a CSV file. Again, I'm not trying to, this tutorial is not to teach people how to use Postgres or how to use Postgres in an optimal way. It's really, it doesn't even matter that it's Postgres. Ultimately, we're just producing a CSV file, and that's what we want to do. Is the tutorial is going to show you how to import from a CSV file. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter to this tutorial. In reality, of course, you have to make sure, especially if this members table is very, very large, that you're doing this in an optimal performant fashion. Okay. So the next thing I want to do, and again, this is just for testing purposes, is I'm going to add another endpoint here. And we're going to call this API loyalty. We'll call this produce CSV. And this is going to simply take that data. So members is going to come from the loyalty repository, get all members for export. It's going to take that list of members, and it's going to create a CSV file on disk somewhere based on the data in here. Now, there are lots of libraries for working with CSV in .NET. The question is, do I want to actually do this in the web project, or should I put it in some other project? I think let's leave it in the web project for now. All right, Calvin, any suggestions for CSV libraries that you have particular predilection for? I think CSV Helper is what I have used in the past. At 9.9 million downloads, it's probably a good choice for reading and writing CSV files. Extremely fast, flexible, easy to use. I have a spotted history with CSV because it's not a particularly robust format for storing and moving data around. In fact, Calvin and I used to work together, and I think one of the features I was supposed to add to software at the time was like a CSV import utility, and you would not believe all the things that can go wrong with a CSV format. But anyway, that's a requirement, so we're going to do it. The more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm still importing and exporting CSV files. All right. So we got an error message here because this doesn't actually do anything yet, but I'll just return it okay as a placeholder. And I'm sure I've used this before, but CSV, let's open it up here and check out some documentation. CSVHelper.net. Looks like there's a page here on GitHub.io. Yep, this is the same one. Recognize the icon. So let's get started. It might be a real simple, quick start. So this is how to read a CSV file. I want to actually create a CSV file, writing it. So we've got a class. So I've got a definition class like this, and I've got a set of records. Yep, they're a list like that. We can write the records to a file without any configuration. So I'm just going to copy and paste that because that's probably exactly what I need. After you're done writing, you should call flush to ensure all the data. Okay, let's come back to that. Okay, so members instead of records here, and this path here doesn't really matter where it goes. We did do an import though. I remember that. Let me see if I can find it. LOL. So the CSV import part, that's going to be another part of this program, and that's going to be the part that I think is going to actually make it in the tutorial, because we're actually going to read CSV, and that's going to be, so the tutorial that I'm writing is meant to be helpful for architects of any sort of technology, which is why I don't want to emphasize the .NET part of it too much. However, importing from a CSV, I mean, there's a couple ways to do it. I could do it with Couchbase CB import. It's a command line utility. I could do it with that. That could just be, I'll just write that in the tutorial like that. You could just use CB import to import CSV files. But you could also do it in .NET code. You can do it in Java code, things like that. So it's going to be a very short snippet of .NET code in the tutorial. And the rest of it's going to be, the rest of this .NET code I'm writing is just for simulation purposes. Anyway, what was I thinking? So these are both in using. I like to wrap the usings up explicitly. But let's, so what I'd probably want to do is create a CSV file, but I'm going to give it a name. So CSV file name. And I want to make this a unique file name. No C#8. Oh, you're talking about the using stuff, Calvin? I'm not sure what you mean with the C#8. Using change, no more brackets required. Yeah, I mean, I think this is true of anything in C#. I don't know about C#8, but I could take off these brackets because basically just one line inside there, right? I don't need brackets with if statements, while loops, things like that. Is there something else that you're referring to? It's still beta though. I just like to put these brackets in here because if I come back to this, I add more code, then I'm at risk of not having forgetting to put those brackets in. No, even if it's multi-line now. Oh, so how would it know when to do the disposal? I guess that'd be my question about that. So no, I don't know if I'm even using C# 8. Is that something I can in the project dispose at the end? So I'm using .NET 3. I don't know about C# 8. Anyway, not a big deal. You should just say .dispose at the end. Well, again, still not sure how that's different because I would just say instead of using, I would just do like this. And then at the end here, I'd say csv.dispose. So that's the equivalent thing. I'm not sure how that's any better or different. So I'm sure there's some difference. I'll have to look into that. Yes, you are derailing me, Kelvin. Says, no, you don't have to do the dispose. Oh, it's automagical. It disposes at the end of the method of the current scope or something. Interesting. Anyway, so for the CSV file name, it's going to have CSV as an extension, of course, and I want it to be loyalty, but I want to put a like a date timestamp in here. So I'm going to say datetime.now. And so that way it's going to create a new file name each time. And then basically on the other end, I'm going to be monitoring a folder or something like that just to find the latest CSV export file. All right, so here's a link. Calvin says using declarations. Okay, tells the compiler variable should be disposed at the end of the enclosing scope. All right. Which, honestly, in most situations, that's what you want to do. Sometimes you may want to dispose it before the end or conditionally dispose it, but that's pretty rare, I think. So you'd say using at the top here, and essentially do away with the whole using scope, and just implicitly dispose at the end. That's kind of cool. And you said to enable that, I'd have to go to build, and then, over here probably in the project. Build, and then under, you said advanced, I can change the C# version to C# 8 beta. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But that's good to know. Thank you, Calvin. All right, so that's going to write a CSV file, hopefully. Let's bring up Swagger and see what happens. I should expect a CSV file of, oh, shoot. How many records? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 records to happen when I produce this CSV. And error. The file name or something is incorrect. So, oh my goodness. There's some slashes. Huh. And that's what's going on. So I think that's what's going on. The date has actually got some slashes, which this stream writer is interpreting as folders. So what I really want is to look like loyalty, and then, so for today it'd be 04/16/2019, 11, maybe like 11:25 a.m. .csv. That's kind of what I want it to look like. So we can do a datetime.now, and then now we have to do a toString, right? What's happening? toString, I said dot Nothing's coming up. Where's my IntelliSense? What's the problem here? Timestamp for file name equals date time. I've lost all my IntelliSense. Panic! No IntelliSense. Ah! How can I code? Okay, don't know what's going on. Something may have crashed. I don't think so. Well, okay. So we'll just do the IT crowd thing and try turning it off and on again. So close Visual Studio. Close this browser while I'm at it. Let's just take a second to admire the broken pieces of one of the Death Stars while I wait for Visual Studio 2019 to start back up. Calvin, a little snippet of code. Date time now, toString. Yeah, that's basically what I'm looking for. Something like that. I can never, for the life of me, however many times I've looked it up, I can never remember all the different formatting strings to use in toString. There's probably some sort of version of it. Yeah, there's probably like a little helper method or some way to do it. You know, I bet who probably does memorize all those date formatting strings, I'll bet you John Skeet knows all those. All right, so let's try it again, see if we get IntelliSense. Got a little bit of some lag here. Visual Studio loading up some plugins or probably something like that. Yeah, this is the new thing with Visual Studio 2019. It sort of loads other pieces. Like it gets you to writing code quickly as possible, but all the other pieces still have to sort of load in the background. Yeah, we'll get this message again. Cover that in a previous stream. Date time dot now. Getting IntelliSense. There we go. toString. I'm just going to steal Calvin's example here. Probably good enough. Okay, and then timestamp for file name. We'll put it right in here. Actually, looking at the docs, there isn't a format string that doesn't have special characters. Okay. Are you saying this isn't going to work? This is going to put slashes in there for me? So find out. I'll set a breakpoint here just to see what it generates. Calvin says that will work. All right. So I'm going to load Swagger here like normal, but I am attached to it now with the debugger. There's no built-in type that I can see. So we'll produce CSV, try it out, executes, and we should hit a breakpoint over here. We do. And so it looks like this, so I kind of want to put like an underscore in there. But that's going to work, I think. Just make it a little more readable for me. So that should work. This should create the CSV file, the CSV data that I crave. Execute and success. All right, and now where did that file actually get created? I suspect if I look in modules, Customer 360 examples, simulator, in the web folder, there it is, CSV file. So I could open this with Excel, and there is the data. First name and last name are missing. I must have messed up my SQL query. You may want MM at the front for the month. Like capital M, is that what you mean? I can do that. So where did I mess up with my SQL? MM is minutes. Oh, lowercase mm is minutes. So I need, yep, that makes sense. Okay, I messed up my, I said select star though. Oh, I think the problem is, yeah. So in here, it's actually F name and L name. Yeah, so let's do F. We'll just do this a hacky way as first name spell name as last name. That ought to do it. And this is where, I don't know if Dapper has anything. You can supply some sort of convention to Dapper or not. But this is a place where I think Dapper, in my experience anyway, can be a little bit extra work to kind of keep this stuff straight. Because the field in the database are different than the fields in your C# object, which hopefully if you design your system, if you design all those parts, you can make those names match up. But if you're using something like Entity Framework, for instance, you could map these fields up in Entity Framework mapping, which is something that Dapper omits. So some trade-offs there. Not a big deal. We'll try it again. Produce another CSV, and this will have a different name, as you can see there. And yeah, so this is the, do I have zoom in going? I feel like I need to zoom in a little bit on this. So that first one there that's highlighted, that's the file name that we first created, and you can see that lowercase mm is at the beginning for 29 minutes on the hour, when it really should be 04 for the month. So that's correct. Open it up in Excel to make sure all the data is in there, and it is. All right, so now a CSV file is being exported. What I should probably do is create a folder to put these into, instead of putting them here in the root of the web project. Because in production situation, you'd want to, if you're creating CSV files, they're going to get picked up by another process. You want to put them in a folder that's relatively isolated, so you can control access to that folder and things like that. Okay, over here in controller, we're going to put it into, that's the file name, and then this is the CSV full path. I like to use path.combine for this because it is CSV Export is the folder, and CSV file name. CSV file name is the file name. So path combine will actually do all the hard work of figuring out the slashes and everything like that. And I'll just put that full path into here. We'll try it again. Let's make sure it worked. Oh, I got another error. Darn it. So I screwed something up with the path, I guess. The file name is incorrect. Okay. Thought it would deal with that slash there. Let me take that slash out, I guess. Path combine, two strings into a path. I thought that's how CSV exports worked. Let's try it again. Or I thought that's how path.combine worked. Okay, that worked that time. So in CSV exports, this is where the CSV file is going to be replaced. Okie doke. Time to commit. CSV export of loyalty data. And I'm not going to check in the CSV file. In fact, why don't we add that to an ignore list? I don't think I need to check in any CSV, so I'm going to add star.csv to ignore that. So you can see I've got it changed to my get ignore. Adding in, oh, a little too specific, but that's fine. Any CSV file in that folder I don't want to check in. So we'll ignore that. So I just added get all members for export method. Added an endpoint just for testing purposes, which ultimately I may want to refactor this into something, but Not really. That's probably fine. Now, let me take that back. Because I'm going to be calling this is going to export a CSV file every 24 hours. So this code needs to be encapsulated into some other method slash service that I can ultimately call from my job scheduler, which I haven't introduced yet. So I'm going to, loyalty repository, this is just for interacting with data. I could put it here, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create loyalty CSV service. It's probably fine. And let's call it loyalty CSV Export service, just so it's clear, because I'm going to do a CSV import into Couchbase in this same project. So I'm going to just move this code over to here. Void export CSV. Put that in here. And we'll need to make loyalty repository passed in. Yep. And CSV writer will need to be, so I can take it out of, I don't need CSV writer in the web project anymore. It just needs to be in core. Yep. I thought it wasn't checked. That's interesting. I don't need it to be in here. So we'll take CSV helper out. Uninstall it from the web. And as you can see, again, with NuGet, you could use the command line for this. It's just view, what is it? Package manager console. Or I could even use the .NET command line to do it. But I'm very much a mousy UI kind of guy, so that's what I'm going to do. So CSV writer, bring it in there. This controller, I don't need CSV helper anymore, so I'll remove that. All I want to do is loyalty service, and it was, what was it? Export CSV. And once again, I have another one here. Loyalty CSV export service. So once again, I'm adding another dependency to my constructor. Again, making me nervous that I'm putting way too much. Oh, I typed it wrong. Putting way too much stuff in here. Probably need some sort of facade or, I don't know, command pattern. Unstaked. Thanks for joining. What you coding? I am coding. Might be a good time to bring this up, just as a little refresher. I'm ultimately writing a tutorial. So I'm writing some code to help me write this tutorial. I've already done this Kafka stream in previous episodes. So what I'm doing now is, imagine I have this loyalty program service in my company, and some users are interacting with this. They're booking airlines, they're buying gas, whatever they want to do to get loyalty points. And I want to bring in that loyalty data into my Customer 360 database to combine it with data from other sources into a complete picture of a customer, hence the Customer 360. So what I'm doing right now is I'm writing some code that will put data into this Postgres database, and then every night it's going to export that data into a CSV. Now, it's kind of a little silly. All I really care about for the tutorial is the actual CSV into the Customer 360 part. But I'm simulating users, customers, racking up loyalty points. I'm simulating that part. That part's not really part of the tutorial, but I want to simulate it so I can show this whole system working end to end. Unstake, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. So anyway, if I'm doing a lot of stuff with Postgres, I'm doing some stuff with CSV, MySQL. I'm in ASP.NET, writing some C#, doing all kinds of interesting stuff. At least I think it's interesting. Loyalty CSV service. Okay. All right, so I just encapsulated that into its own service. That way, when I go and add probably Hangfire later, probably not today, but when I add Hangfire to do the nightly job, I can reuse this CSV export service there. So I don't have to duplicate my code. I do need to, and before I forget, I need to go add that to the container here. Loyalty CSV export service. Here's my Swagger UI, and here's my, let's see, my Customer 360. So the folder where I expect CSV files to show up is CSV exports right here. I did one earlier. I'm going to hit produce CSV, and it's going to create another one, hopefully. Yep, there it is. Just timestamped slightly later. You see it kind of matches up with the date modified field there. Okay. All right, so I'm happy with that. In there. Okay, so now I'm actually going to do the commit. This is all being put onto GitHub. So I've refactored this service here. So let's just review these changes. Added CSV helper to the core project. Added this get all members for export to the loyalty repository. Added an endpoint to actually produce the CSV file by calling that service. And in startup, I added the service to our container. And this is the code that's actually going to create the CSV file. So CSV exports of CSV export capability for loyalty data. Okay, and I'll just immediately go and push that out to the Customer 360 ingestion branch, this repository. Alrighty, so that's probably a good stopping point for now. We got data being put in, we got Postgres up and running, we got data being put into Postgres, and we got CSV data coming out of Postgres. So the next thing I need to do, I'll probably do this next episode, Hard Denmark, but I'm just joining. Sorry, Hard Denmark. I got a hard stop at noon, so I thought I would maybe end the stream here soon and take a little break before my next meeting. I appreciate you stopping by, though. Michael Jolly. Oh, hey, Michael Jolly. Thanks for stopping by. You caught a stream just as it ends. Yeah, sorry about that. I do 10 a.m. on Tuesday, and I'll do 1:30 on Thursday. But all the videos are up there if you really want to check it out and see what happened. And all the code is up on GitHub, so you can check all this stuff out. But what I think I'll do next time is I will introduce Hangfire, which is a pretty cool open source project. In fact, Calvin, that might be my next choice for project of the week. Is that what we're calling it? Hangfire. It runs background jobs in ASP.NET or .NET processes without having to run a separate process. It's very, very cool, very easy to use. I've been using it for some other stuff of my own, and I think it makes sense for here because I want the CSV. Thanks for the follow, Hard Denmark. I appreciate it. Hopefully next time you can join and join us a little earlier with the stream. So Tuesdays and Thursdays is when I'm streaming coding for sure. I do other streams from time to time. I'll do some gaming stuff, some electronics stuff, maybe some VR, some podcast stuff, things like that. But what else was I saying? Anyway, so next time I'll probably introduce Hangfire because I'll be creating the CSV files every 24 hours. So I want to create that system. I also want to add in some background tasks to keep the simulator going, to keep adding users, updating users, to to both the loyalty program and the what was the other system? I forgot already. It's right in here. Oh, the home delivery system. So it'll be continuously simulating people updating their profiles, updating their data, updating their loyalty in the background. So I'll use Hangfire to do that. So I don't have to go in and manually click like what I'm doing here in Swagger each time. Calvin says you could also try that new project template in .NET 3.0 previews. Heard about it on an awesome podcast. Yeah, the .NET Bytes podcast. Yeah, so that is interesting, but the cool thing about Hangfire, and this is the thing I like about it, is that I don't have to set up a separate project and remember to start it and register it as a service and things like that. It's just part of this existing process. And the other thing that's cool about it is it's backed by data. It's a database backed system, so it can also scale out, and it can recover, and it can keep retrying, and it has cool dashboards and things like that. So anyway, I like Hangfire a lot. I think I'm going to go with that for what I'm going to be doing. So that's what I'm going to do next time. Thanks everyone again for joining. Thank you for the follows. I appreciate it. Thanks to you all, I'm actually in the process of getting affiliate status now. I'm working the paperwork and things. So I really appreciate you all following me and checking out these streams and stuff. You can check out the old videos on Twitch here, of course, and I'll also put them onto YouTube, and I usually put little highlight clips of stuff as well. So you can check those things out. All right, that's it. I'm signing off for the day. Thanks very much. Calvin A. Allen might do some streaming, and Michael Jolly might do some code streaming. So if you're looking for that, you can also follow those two guys. They do some cool stuff as well. All right, that's it. Goodbye.